Alright, good morning. We're going to talk about factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1. So we have a couple of just vocabulary. So we're talking about factoring. Factoring is the act or process of separating an equation or expression into its component parts. So essentially what we're doing is undoing the distributive property. So the opposite of this distributive property. Factors are two numbers that multiply to get another number. So an example is 2 and 3 are factors of 6. If I do 2 times 3, that gives me 6. So the types of problems that we're going to be looking at here, they're going to look like this. The difference is going to be that B and C are going to actually be numbers. So we're going to have numbers for B and C. So the trinomials, the first one that we have is this example here. So x squared plus 3x minus 10. So what you're going to do on these is you're going to essentially read the expression backwards. So I'm going to be asking myself this question when I start. And so for all of these trinomials, it's going to be what are the factors of C, so what are the factors of this n number that add or subtract to B, so this middle number, okay? Sometimes the two factors add up to B, sometimes the two factors subtract to B, and this sign right here between the two is actually going to tell you if you're adding or subtracting. So when we're looking here at our actual example, it's going to be what are the factors of 10 that subtract to 3, okay? What are the factors of 10 that subtract to 3. So to simplify this, what we need to do is we need to make a list of all of the factors of 10. And so we're trying to think what numbers out there would multiply to 10. And so we can think 1 times 10 is 10. We also have 2 times 5. And then we can kind of keep thinking 10 doesn't divide by 3, it doesn't divide by 4, and then if I tried to divide by 5, I would get 2, so I'd be back with the 2 and 5. So then I'm going to make this x, which is just going to be a graphic organizer to help us out, okay? And what you're going to do with the x, and we can kind of put a template here if we want. When you draw out this x, you're going to put C here, and you're going to put B here. And then the two factors that you get are going to go on those other parts. So in this case, C is 10. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, it's actually negative 10. The sign doesn't matter on the top. It's just the sign is telling us factors of 10 that are subtracting to 3. Okay? The sign does matter right here, though. That's a positive 3, so we're going to put a positive 3 right there. If it had been minus 3x, then we would need to put negative 3. And if it makes you feel better to make this negative 10, you can do that. It's fine. Okay? So factors of 10, we have 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. And what we're looking for is we're looking for which factors of 10 subtract to 3. So if I do 10 minus 1, that's going to give me 9. And if I do 5 minus 2, that's going to give me 3. So I know that these two are my numbers. Okay? So I'm going to put 2 and 5 here. It doesn't matter if you put 5 here and 2 here. The order of those two doesn't matter. So then I want to think about, if I had these two numbers, what would the signs of those two numbers have to be to get me to 3? Okay, and so when you're doing your signs, the signs are always going to be where I combine these two and I get this middle number. Okay, and so we can think through that logically, and we can go, okay, there's two options. There's there's several options. There's -2 and +5. Okay, so if I did that, if I did -2 and +5, when I combine those two, 5 minus 2 is 3. So that's going to work out. Those two, so I'm going to have this negative here. And I could also go down the list where I have +2 and +5. Well, when I combine those, I get 7. I could have +2 and -5. That's going to give me -3. And I can also have -2 and -5, which is going to give me -7. Okay? Now, if you don't want to have to go through kind of all of those different options, one thing that you can look for, if you remember, is this sign right here, this left sign. That sign is going to go with the highest of the two factors, and it's always going to be that way. So I know that my higher of my two factors is going to be a positive. 5 was the higher of the two factors. It's a positive. Okay? So then you're going to set up your parentheses. It's always just going to be kind of x's in the front. So for these particular ones, x is in the front. And we have our two parentheses. And then the last thing is we're going to fill in our factors with the correct signs. So once we've made this, all we have to do is transfer it down here. So we have x minus 2 and x plus 5. Okay, so it says, I gave you guys kind of this deal I already said earlier. The highest of the two factors will have the sign on the left. So if we're looking at our problem, that is this sign right here. Okay, so that when I write down my two numbers, the higher number is 5, that's going to get a plus sign. And then I can just tell myself, what would that other sign have to be to get me to 3? And so if I subtract 2, I get 3. If I add 2, I get 7. So this is actually our answer right here. X minus 2 times x plus 5. Or x plus 5, x minus 2. Those are the same thing. We talked in the past about how multiplication is commutative, which means order doesn't matter. So like if I do 2 times 5, I get 10. Well, if I do 5 times 2, I still get 10. So multiplication, whatever order it's in, you're going to get the same answer. And then for our last step of the problem, what I want you to do is I want you to check it. And so when you're checking it, you're going to use what we learned last week, so our box method. And we're going to take this and we're going to multiply it out. And when we multiply it out, we should get what we started with. Okay, so this original problem we started with. So this will be some good review as well for anybody who just kind of really didn't completely understand last week. So take your two factors. You're going to write them down. We'll have x and -2, x and positive 5. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go through and we're going to multiply each of these terms that correspond with the different boxes. So it's like when I'm looking at this box right here, it's x and x. X times x is x squared. Then I have x and -2. When I multiply those two to get this spot right here, because this corresponds with x, this corresponds with -2, that's going to give me -2x. Then I have these two spots that go to this box, 5 and x. 5 times x is 5x. And then here lines up with 5 and -2. 5 times -2 is -10. Now, One thing that I did see a few people struggling with or forgot to do last week when they did these is y'all did a wonderful job of filling in your box, multiplied correctly, and did a really good job of that. What you didn't do was combine these two numbers right here. So those are like terms. They're both x's, right? We've talked about like terms in the past. And if I have like terms, I want to combine them. Okay? So I'm going to end up with x squared. And when I combine these, 5 minus 2 is 3. So that's going to be plus 3x minus 10. And when I check that, that's exactly what I started with. So I've proven that this factor pair, when multiplied out, when distributed out, gets me this original piece, okay? And so this is how this is related to last week, is it's really the opposite of what we did last week. So going backwards from there. Okay, so that checks out. All right, we're going to do a few more examples with all different signs. Okay, so probably should start with example 2. All right, so example 2. X squared plus 12x plus 20. Okay, so what we're looking for on each one of these is very specific things. Okay, we're going to look for your x. Okay, so am I filling in my x? And we're going to look for where you write out the factors. Okay, so when I read this backwards, what are the factors of 20 that add to 12? Okay, it's not always going to be adding. It depends on what that sign is there. And so here we're adding. So factors of 20 that add to 12. So let's think about our factors of 20. So we'll have 20 here. We'll have 12 down here. So factors of 20 that add to 12. Factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10. And I know a question that y'all are going to have and that you ask a lot is, well, Coach Hewitt, how am I supposed to know what the factors are? Okay, the easiest thing to do, guys, is I'm going to take 20 and I'm going to start dividing it by different numbers. Okay, and you can use a calculator, on your phone or whatever to do that. So 20 divided by 1 is 1. Okay, so that's 1 and 20. That's my pair. 20 divided by 2 gives me 10. So 2 and 10. And if I think about it, 2 times 10 is 20. Okay, then I can try to do 20 divided by 3. 20 does not divide by 3 evenly. So there isn't a factor pair there. Then I can do 20 divided by 4. When I do 20 divided by 4, I'm going to get 5. And if I think about it, 4 times 5 gives me 20. Okay, so that's giving me those factor pairs. Then I can go, what's after 4? 5. 20 divided by 5 is going to give me 4. But I've already written down 4 and 5. So once I start repeating, I need to stop my list. Okay, so then I am doing, once again, factors of 20 that add to 12. So I want to think about which of these pairs are going to add up to 12. It has to be the pairs. You can't I can't try to add 1 and 5. Okay, it's the specific pairs together. So 20 plus 1 is 21. That's not going to work. 10 plus 2 is 12 though. 5 plus 4 is 9. So I should use 2 and 10. All right, so I'm using 2 and 10. I'm going to set up my parentheses. And I'm going to put my 2 and my 10. And let's think about our signs, okay? So I told you guys already, this sign right here the highest number is going to get that sign. Well, what's the higher number between 2 and 10? It's 10. So 10 is going to be positive. Now, I'm trying to get to 12, so I need to think about 10 plus 2 or 10 minus 2 is going to get me to 12. 10 plus 2 is going to get me to 12. So these should both be positives. And this is my answer. X plus 2, x plus 10. Or x plus 10 times x plus 2. Either way. All right, so let's check it. Okay, so we have x2, x10. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 10 times x is 10x. And 10 times 2 is 20. Don't forget to combine these like terms right here. So we have x squared plus 12x plus 20. All right, so that checks. All right, next one here. We have x squared minus 8x plus 12. So my question, what are the factors of 12 that add to 8? Okay, and once again, it's not always adding. Okay, you have to really make sure that you're paying attention. I am not saying it's adding to the middle number every time. Because on this very bottom one right here, the next one we're going to do, there's a subtraction sign right here. This is actually going to end up being what are the factors of 50 that subtract to 5. Okay, so we have 12. This is a minus 8, so we need to have negative 8 on the bottom. That sign really matters there. Okay, so factors of 12. 1 and 12. 2 and 6. 3 and 4. And then we start repeating 4 and 3. So, factors of 12, we want them to add up to 8. 12 plus 1 is not 8. 6 plus 2 is 8. So that's going to be our two numbers there. Now, thinking about my signs, okay, this left sign here, the highest number is going to get that sign. Well, the higher of 2 and 6 is the 6, so I know it's going to be a negative 6. And then I need to ask myself, should I subtract 2 or add 2 to get to negative 8? I should subtract 2. Negative 6 and negative 2 is going to get me to negative 8. Okay, so just write it out now. Minus 2, minus 6, there's your answer. Okay, so we have x minus 2, x minus 6. We multiply x squared minus 2x minus 6x and plus 12. Combine these like terms in the middle here. And we're going to get x squared minus 8x plus 12. And that's what we started with, x squared minus 8x plus 12. All right, last one. X squared minus 5x minus 50. All right, make our x. We have 50 and -5. Now, I told you guys before, the negative up here is not really, we don't have to put it, but you can if you want to. So, factors of -50. So, let's just think, what are some factors of 50? So, 1 and 50, 2 and 25. 50 doesn't divide by 3 or 4, but it does by 5 and 10. Doesn't divide by 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we'd repeat at 10. So these are our factors, and we're looking for factors of 50 that subtract to 5. So 50 minus 1 would be 49, so that's not right. 25 minus 2 is 23, that's not right. But 10 minus 5 is 5. So this is going to be our factor pair. 5 and 10. Now we're trying to get to -5. So if I look here, higher of my two numbers is going to get this sign. 10 is higher, so it's negative. And then I need to think, I have -10. Should I add 5 or subtract 5 to get to -5? If I add 5, it's going to get me to -5. So those are my signs. Then I just write it out. All right, so we have x plus 5, x minus 10. X times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. -10 times x is -10x. And -10 times 5 is -50. Like terms right here. X squared minus 5x minus 50. So that checks out. So, pretty good. They'll all be like this. Take your time and do well. The assignment for this is on a website called Delta Math. There is a set of instructions that are attached to your assignment that you can follow along, and it'll help you make an account, and then you will do the problems on there.